Okay. Hi, Hannah. How are you?
Good. How are you, Fanny?
Doing well, thank you. So, what brings you in today?
Yeah. I'm coming in today because as the holidays draw closer, just some family stuff is coming up that is hard to navigate and just been really weighing heavy on me. Um, for some context, I have two siblings, an older brother and a younger sister. My older brother lives here and my younger sister lives out of town, but none of us really have a relationship with my dad. And um, after my parents got divorced about 12 years ago, maybe 11 years ago, um, I was married and so kind of was off on my own. And then when we started having kids, I set some pretty heavy boundaries with my dad and said, you are always welcome in our home. You are welcome to see our kids. We have three boys, but the boundaries were his current wife could not be present and that um, he couldn't be drinking. And so, because of that, he has never met two of my sons, and we live like 10 minutes away from each other. Um, and so, yeah, I send him a text message about every month or so, just telling him I love him and I'm praying for him and I'm here for him. And sometimes he'll respond and sometimes he doesn't. And I think that's just for me because honestly, I feel bad if I don't reach out. I just don't think I could live with myself if something happened to him and he didn't know that, though there's these boundaries, I care about him. Um, but as the holidays have gotten closer, he's reached out to my siblings a couple of times and they haven't answered because usually he's been drinking. And um, yeah, there's some pretty difficult stuff that's gone on with him and his wife, really dysfunctional and abusive stuff. And so, yeah, it's hard because I want to reach out and I want to call him and check on him. But at the same time, I need those boundaries that I've laid. Um, I really can't handle kind of the dysfunction that he brings to my life. And so to keep my kids from that has been really good. Um, but yeah, again, like as we get closer to the holidays and um, I just start thinking about him a lot and I don't necessarily feel guilty because I feel like I've done everything I can to, within my boundaries, reach out and have a relationship with him. Um, and to welcome him into a relationship with my boys.
Mhm.
Um,
It,
but yeah,
it sounds like you really value wanting to have a relationship with your dad. Um, and
yeah,
even though you said boundaries, you that's important to you, and the holidays are coming up, and you care about that relationship still because he's still your dad.
yeah, I definitely still care about him. And I think there is hesitancy still to reach out because I'm not going to move on my boundaries, but I feel like the more I kind of open that door, I don't really want necessarily I want my door to be open, if that makes sense. Like if you can hold to the boundary that I've set. Um, but at this point, I also feel like he isn't going to. I mean, he hasn't for the last, I guess, 7 years that I've had kids, and And there's a part of that that's comforting because it is very dysfunctional and just really chaotic. And so there's relief. I feel relief that I don't have to deal with that. But then on the flip side, it's not guilt. I feel just compassion towards him because I just feel like he's got to be lonely and miserable. And um, at the same time, it's kind of his choice. Um, and like I said, I've continued to reach out with him to him. My other siblings are like, he's dead to me, kind of like they don't answer his phone call, they don't text him back. Um,
It sounds
yeah,
like on the one hand, you have very strict boundaries with your dad and you want to protect your children from his alcohol abuse or substance abuse. And on the other hand, you still feel compassion for him and he's still your dad and you want some level of relationship with him, even if it's very minimal interaction.
yeah, I guess that's what I'm kind of struggling over is I think I more feel like I want him to know that he's loved by me unconditionally because I don't know if he knows what that kind of love is like. I mean, I think my mom tried to give that to him. Um, but he was really abusive in their relationship and um yeah, but I think that's like the conflict I'm in right now is I want him to know that because he's my dad, I love him so much. But then, yeah, there's the hesitancy because I don't want a relationship with him um, as far as how things stand now. Um, just because I can't even have a conversation with him without him playing the victim and everything is everybody else's fault. And he constantly brings up my mom, and it's hard. My mom and I have done a lot of work together over the years to heal our relationship. And some of that healing is still kind of taking place. Some of that trust is still being mended. Um, and so yeah, it's like he's never tried to take ownership, I think, for the things that he's done because he's the victim. And also, I really believe he's sick. I mean, he's an alcoholic, one, and then two, um, yeah, I can't diagnose him, but I feel like there's something else happening. And on the flip side, there's compassion because his parents were awful. I mean, very abusive.
Yeah.
Um, And so I do feel like he has grown and he was a better parent than they were. So that's something.
Yeah.
So there's compassion there because I think when my brother and I talk about it a lot, he's like, there's no excuse, da 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 da, And for me, it's like, yes, he had responsibility to like take action and to try to make changes. At the same time, I think he was a much better parent than his own parents and
Mhm.
also help and therapy. And those things were not as readily accessible or accepted as it is now. Um, so there's compassion and understanding. But yeah, I think internally, the things that I'm wrestling with are I do love him and he is my dad. And how do I show that love to him without offering a relationship? And I don't know if I'm doing the best that I can, just by sending him some text messages every now and then, just letting him know that I'm thinking about him and praying for him and that I'm here, or if that looks like something else. Um, yeah.
Yeah, as you're talking, I can I can sense the hurt that you have and the love that you have for your dad. So there's a mix of emotions that I'm feeling as you're talking about this. Especially being that it's the holidays and that must make it even harder for you. Um,
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, he hasn't been a part of our holiday traditions in a really long time. But I think all I can think about is like, what do his holidays look like? You know, how is he not, I don't know, sad? Or it's also just hard for me to imagine not ever meeting or knowing my kids, no matter what the situation is. Um, so yeah, it's just a hard, I don't know if it's just like I need to tell myself, hey, you're doing all you can do, and that's all you can do.
yeah.
Um,
Is there, you said you had mentioned that he doesn't know two of your children. He hasn't met them. Is there like an opportunity or a window of opportunity where he could potentially meet them, even if it's through like a window or, where you can still keep your boundaries, but he could still at least wave from, yeah, like from a window, or so at least he can get to know them and see what they look like and or talk through a phone
yeah.
at the same time.
So actually, that's not true. I'm going to backtrack. He has met actually my other two children, and it just so happened that last year, around this time, actually, um, so my younger two boys are, at that time, they were, gosh, I don't even know, 2 and 4. Um, and we live on kind of a main street in our little town. And me and my boys were just walking down the sidewalk, and he just pulled into my driveway. And I didn't even know who it was. Um, and he pulled up, and I still kind of didn't recognize him because I haven't seen him in so long. And he got out, and it was very awkward and uncomfortable. One, because my husband was out of town, and so he wasn't there. Um, and also, yeah, I just feel like my dad had never met my other two sons since then. He never called. I don't know. For me, that feels really inappropriate to kind of just show up somewhere, especially because he hadn't talked to me in forever. He never answered my calls or my text messages, and so the situation was really awkward and uncomfortable. My boys know why we don't have a relationship with him, because when they were young, they asked, like, who is your dad? Where is he? What, this is so strange, you know? Um, and yeah, he got out, and it was just even just like recounting it, it just makes me feel really uncomfortable because that's how it felt. And um just thinking it back. But anyways, my oldest son was like, "Who is that, mommy?" And I just said, that's mommy's dad." And my oldest didn't remember him because the
Mhm,
last time he'd seen him, he was like a year old, maybe.
mhm,
Um, and so yeah, it was just really weird. And he just asked me some questions, just like, "How are you?" And he said, I didn't even know he knew that I lived there. And he said, I've known that you've lived here for a while, and I drive by sometimes, but I've never seen you outside. And so I saw you outside, so I had to stop." And I said, it's kind of inappropriate. I wish you would have called or texted, because you can't just show up here
mhm.
um, unannounced. Um, yeah, so he has met them. Um, I don't know. It feels, as I'm thinking now, like about that situation, it's not that I'm angry with him because I've gotten over that for a long time. I think I just do not understand and have a hard time comprehending how a relationship with a grandfather and their grandchildren can even look like that. I don't know. It's hard for me to kind of fathom. But I genuinely think in his mind, he's the victim.
Yeah.
So, and I think this is why I'm so hesitant to even like try to reach out for some kind of relationship because it's just so murky and messy and complicated.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
as I'm hearing you talk, I can, excuse me, I can feel the heaviness in your heart from all this. I
yeah,
can feel the weight that is on you in this situation with your dad and having to set those boundaries and having to keep your children from having a relationship with their grandpa, which is a very special thing.
yeah,
It can be.
yeah. And yeah, I also think that like I see their relationship that they have with my husband's dad, and I don't necessarily think about what they're missing out on because I do feel like we are very blessed and that we have a lot of family that love them so well. But I think about what he's missing out on. Yeah, but at the same time, it's like, does he even really care? Because even in his relationship with us, his kids, it felt to all of us that it was just um, something to boast about. Like it was never, I love you because I love you. Like there's no strings, it's unconditional. It was very conditional and it was always for the outside, for looks, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It was always a show, always, um, yeah. So like I've heard other people tell me that he has told them that I am keeping my family from him, and that's just not true. I
Mhm.
have explicitly said, you are welcome anytime over here. You call me, we'll make it happen. If you can come um, sober,
Yeah.
and I don't feel like that's too much to ask. And if it is, then yeah, I don't really know how to navigate that. So,
Mhm.
um,
And you mentioned earlier that your other siblings have written him off and don't want anything to do with it. Have they made any attempts, like you, to reconnect with him, or that may make may make the situation alleviate that may alleviate the situation, or
I know my brother, they had a altercation several years ago. Um, that basically my dad just said he didn't deserve his last name, and it was really an ugly uh, fallout, I think. And so since then, my brother has said, I don't want anything to do with you. As far as I'm concerned, I don't have a dad. And he's not really budging on that. I mean, even when I talk with my brother and talk about this compassion or how I feel bad for him, or even like, well, you know how he grew up, like I think it's hard to say he's doing the best he can because I don't believe that, but um, I think he's giving what he can give, his capacity, right? Like the capacity of his knowledge and growth, like he's doing what he can. And my brother's just like, that's ridiculous. Like I don't believe that. He's a a piece and doesn't deserve my love and affection or relationship or anything like that. So my brother has completely written him off. My sister said she talked with him maybe about a year ago and said kind of this very similar to me, like, I love you. I want to keep boundaries and distance. And I'd love to see you if you weren't when she's home because she doesn't live here. Um, but yeah, I don't want to see you when you've been drinking or different things like that. And so I don't think he's been willing to, I don't know. I don't know what he wants from us except to say, like, these are the boundaries.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, and it's also very complicated because both my mom and dad um, married their neighbors. So what I mean by that is like my mom married the husband and then my dad married the wife of
Oh,
the same couple. So what's complicated is my dad, so it'd be my dad and then my mom's husband's ex-wife. They have kids, or like my mom's husband and his ex-wife have 3 kids together. And they all are still in relationship with my dad and their mom. And so I think that they like tell them a lot about me and my siblings' life, just that they hear from my mom and her husband. So I think like that's how he knew where I lived and different things like that. And so, yeah, it's complicated because at the same time, they tell my mom like all the dysfunctional crazy stuff that's happening at my dad's house.
mhm.
And so yeah, in a way it feels like I can't, because I'm hearing the dysfunction that's still going on. It keeps me even more, I'm like I don't want to, if that's what's happening, I don't want to pull myself or my family into that. But then I mean, truly, it's like I don't know what happiness he has in his life, like what joy he has. And that part makes me sad.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like on the one hand, he's made attempts in his own way to connect by showing up at your house, driving by your house and unannounced and not respecting your boundaries, but at the same because he maybe wants to have a connection with you in a relationship, but at the same time, he doesn't want to give up his lifestyle and what he's, been his whole life. So
Yeah. Or even it feels like he's not even aware of. And so a lot of times that's just what's hard is like when we speak about our childhood or his marriage to my mom, it's his version is so far from the truth that it's just hard to even talk through it. Um, and then it's also hard for me to just sit there and listen to him lie and make stuff up. And so I will, say, well, that's not true because I was there and this happened and you did this and you did this. And then it just kind of all spirals because then he's like, well, no, I didn't. And you're just, the thing he always says to me is, you're just like your mom and blah, 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 blah. And at that point, it's like, I'm not going to sit here and fight with you. I
yeah,
love you. I just wanted to check on you. And so it's always kind of comes back to this like, he's the victim. We've all wronged him. And we should feel guilty for that. And I don't.
yeah,
So yeah, there's not even like an ounce of guilt that I feel. I think mostly I just feel like sadness and just compassion because it just feels like what a sad life to have.
yeah. Yeah, it sounds like I'm hearing you say you have a broken relationship with your dad. and the holidays are coming up, and your brother and sister have completely written him off and don't want to have any relationship with him, and there's a lot of different dynamics happening in the family, with remarrying neighbors, and it sounds like you want to have some kind of relationship with him because you do care about him. I can sense that, and I can feel that compassion you have for him, and you feel sad for him that he's missing out on the relationship that he could potentially have also with your children as a grandfather. And because you see how your children get along with your husband's dad, and you want that for your children, but you can't have that because of his lifestyle and choices he's made. And that makes you sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, if you could do things differently, like what other options would there be, or insights have you thought of, or scenarios?
Oh, like, do you like if I could do things with my dad differently or for a
Yeah,
relationship look different?
yeah. Like, is there
Um,
an option for like to have a FaceTime relationship with him, like where you could still have boundaries, but you could still have some FaceTime, or like with
yeah,
technology?
I think at this point for me, yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm having a hard time is because that is not something that I can do right now. Because I just don't think that he is, um, I just don't think a conversation even like that would be helpful. We've tried talking on the phone, and yeah, usually he's drunk, and that's a problem. And I've suggested, like, hey, why don't you try calling me on the way to work or on the way home from work? Because at least I know you're probably not drinking or drunk when you're on the way to work or on the way home from work. But he just said he was too busy and he just wasn't willing to do that. So I've opened up space, I think, for that. But if it's a weekend or if it's an evening, I'm just not gonna pick up. And I'm not gonna schedule a FaceTime or a call with him just because from the moment he's at home, he is drinking or drunk. And yeah, on a sober day, having a reasonable conversation with him is hard, but when he's been drinking alcohol, it's just impossible. And so that's what I mean is like, I just don't even, um, just because of unfortunately how he is and how he behaves, um, yeah, I can't. Even before, when I would entertain his phone calls, it was just an hour of him yelling and screaming and calling me names or this, and this. And I just, yeah, I'm not willing to compromise on anything like that
Mm.
or let in space for him in that way, which is why I've never said we can't have a relationship or I don't want a relationship. I've always said these are the parameters in which we can talk, or these are the parameters in which you can come to my house, um, or speak to my kids or whatever that is. Um, and so, yeah, it's just that he won't do that. Um, so yeah, then it ends up being just him randomly showing up at my house being drunk, um, and it being really weird and uncomfortable. So
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've done, a lot to make the relationship work. it does take two people to have a relationship, and you seem to have a big heart to keep wanting to find different ways to make it work. And it's been very difficult to keep those doors open, to make it sustainable. And I can sense that it's hurtful to you, and it weighs heavy on your chest to have to continue to be in this type of relationship with your dad and trying to make it work, but what you've tried or attempted hasn't been successful with him. Have you thought about maybe acceptance of what it is?
Yeah, I definitely have accepted, I think where our relationship is. I think what I haven't accepted is, I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I have accepted the state of our relationship and the state of, like, I'm never disappointed when he doesn't respond to me or he doesn't. That's just for me. Reaching out to him is for me, really, not for him. And that's just me being honest. I just, if he took his own life or something happened to him or something like that, I think for me, I just would want to know, like, hey, I told him I loved him I
Yeah,
did what I could. I can't control how he receives that or how he interprets it or um, whatever. But I think what's hard for me to accept is just his state of life. But at the same time, I mean, he's chosen that. Um, I want so bad for him to get help and for him to see his need. The problem is he doesn't even see a need for any type of help or intervention or um, anything like that. And I think that's what's really difficult is he just thinks I don't know. That's a problem is like deep down inside, what does he really think? Does he really think he's just living life and he's the victim and he never does anything wrong and he's not to blame for anything? Or, yeah, is it hard for him to cope with himself?
yeah,
And I think those are the things that's hard for me to accept. It really has nothing to do with his relationship with me. I think
yeah,
it has everything to do with like his well-being. Like what does he think about at night? I mean, what is he and those are things I can't control and I can't change.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. We're at time, but just to recap, it sounds like you have come to some acceptance of the part of the relationship of what it is, what it's going to be, but not of his choices because you care about him and you care about his well-being, and um you don't want anything to happen to him without you making sure that he knows that you did care about him and that you did love him and that you did your best to keep somewhat of a relationship open. And maybe in the next session we can talk about um maybe not feeling responsible for others' choices. And maybe that's something we can talk about next time in the next session.
okay.
That would be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Fanny.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. I'll keep recording. That's good. Okay.
Oh, yeah, because we have to do feedback. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that felt like 35 minutes with my fast.
Yeah, it
Maybe
did.
not for you, but for me.
Yeah, after,
Um,
yeah, it didn't feel long.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um, so I think the only thing I would say is I didn't hear a lot of reflection of feeling.
okay.
Um, I did hear a lot of a reflection of meaning. So I do feel like you did that a lot of like, oh, it sounds like this or this is happening or um yeah, but I think kind of like reflecting my feelings like you feel because
Okay. Yeah.
or even like, what's it like for you to like with my story maybe in the past, like what's it like for you to like think back on what happened.
Yeah.
um
Okay.
yeah, but other than that I thought it was really good. You paraphrased a good bit. Your summary was good. um you even gave me like a strength there in the middle somewhere, so I appreciate that. um and then there was something else that you did that I appreciated. Oh, you did the it wasn't really the miracle question, but it was like if this, I don't know, it helped me kind of think through, but you like just in your prompting of like, you know, what what would be different if it could be. And I think it did make me kind of realize that like right now, without a miracle happening, there really isn't anything that could be different.
Yeah.
And so I really like that you said, well, maybe, we have you just accepted the situation. And so, yeah, I think that was really good.
Mhm.
Um, because there's some things that like we can't really, well, you did reframe a lot of like, yeah, it sounds like you really care and you have compassion for him. And I appreciated that. Um, but yeah, just like accepting that like that's how it is. And then it just made me think like, do I really accept this? Like what are the parts that I'm not accepting?
Yeah.
And so yeah, it helped me kind of think through that on a really practical sense. So thank you for that.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, other than that, I thought it was really good.
Okay.
How
Good.
did you feel about it?
Um, yeah, I was trying to focus on like giving you like feedback and exploring
Yeah,
different alternatives as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
Trying to see like, what other insight your siblings have brought in, like what are their thoughts? Just
Hmm.
kind of thinking about just
Yeah,
exploring
that was really good.
that sense. And yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to do. And I did some,
No, yeah, that was good.
yeah, I was trying to do some confrontations too, like to see that like the conflict is there, like to kind of show,
Right.
like, yeah, there's a lot of conflicts here, like this is,
Yes.
one thing, but then this is kind of stopping it, so there's a lot of that.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm glad you brought that up because yeah, I do. Yeah, I was like, oh, that's good. She really brought in like brought out the conflictual feelings, not only that I was feeling, but then like, yeah, this is kind of the conflict, and what do you do with that? So
yeah.
yeah,
Like even with your dad, like it sounds to me like he wants to have a relationship with you. Like he's thought, he's driving by your house and he's showing up unannounced. But at the same time, he still wants to do what that lifestyle and do what he wants to do. So there's like that conflict there. And I'm
yeah,
sure he probably feels that heaviness too, like
yeah,
having to choose between, his habit and his daughter and his family. So that must be really hard too. So
yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah, good. But that's good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll stop the
All
recording.
right.